Holley Moseley, good morning, and thank you so greatly for taking time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You are such an incredible woman, such a real force to be dealt with, I think, a bundle of energy at the very least of it. And with this new book that you've written, A Ray of Hope, A Mother's Story of Love, Healing, and the Miracle of Medical Marijuana, I think that kind of captures the essence of what this is at least mostly about, without really understanding the full source of energy within you. But this is the story you've been living for into the teens in terms of the number of years that you've been dealing with these challenges.
Yeah, correct. Our story began about 14 years ago. I was a nurse working at the local children's hospital in Pensacola, Florida. And I went to work one day, and I was assigned a patient who was at the time was 2 years old, diagnosed with epilepsy and cerebral palsy, and she was hospitalized for medical shelter, meaning there was not a medical home a medical foster home in our community. So she was brought to the hospital to receive care. And we just were connected instantly. And as it got closer, this was in November, so as it got closer to Christmas, my heart was just breaking for her. Did not want her to have to spend Christmas in the hospital. And so I talked with the social worker and with my husband, and we made it happen. And she came home to our house, and instantly we knew, that's where she was meant to be. And so we pursued adoption. Rayanne, again, was diagnosed with epilepsy and cerebral palsy, and we didn't know how much of that was from the neglect and how much was her true diagnosis. And we quickly learned that the epilepsy was going to be much more difficult to control than we had hoped. She is diagnosed with a type of epilepsy called intractable, which means it's exactly that. It's difficult to control. It's pharma resistant. And so it was very trying and frustrating as a mom. You want to fix your kid, you want to fix things for your children. And we just weren't able to fix this.
Right. So, Holley, just hearing that little bit of encapsulation of the story, just on the one hand is so heart-wrenching to think of this little child dealt this kind of hand with such severe like cerebral palsy and epilepsy. I mean, that's just such a huge burden for a little one to carry, and yet how wonderful for her that you and your husband came along with the heart to want to embrace her and bring her into your family. When you were mentioning the kind of epilepsy that Rayanne has, is this something then, because in the book you talk about genetic testing, is it something that is hereditary, or is it just something that just comes out of the blue and could strike anyone?
So for Rayanne, she started having seizures at birth. And, we weren't sure. In the beginning, we were told they did testing in the beginning, and it just wasn't clear to what was going on. But as they were able to refine the genetic testing farther down the line, then we were finally able to get a true answer. And so Rayanne is diagnosed with a type of epilepsy called KCNQ2. And it's just everyone has that gene, but her gene has a slight mutation on it. And so it has caused this spectrum of, the cerebral palsy, the developmental delay, the epilepsy, and so forth. And in the beginning, we were just told, 30% of patients with epilepsy are considered intractable, and we just don't always know the cause. And again, it just took years of them refining the type of genetic testing that's available to be able to finally get answers. And so since we've gotten those answers, it's been really nice because we were able to connect with the KCNQ2 Foundation and meet other families of children who have this specific disorder. And just really, it's so nice to have that support staff, that support group there for you. And as well, they're able to do research on this specific gene and try to find, what works. And unfortunately, they haven't found anything that's just really working for all of these kiddos. And so still more research is happening. And so that's something to be nice, that's nice to be a part of, is to hopefully, it may not help Rayanne, today, but something that may help kids down the road.
And that certainly is one of the main passions I feel in this book is really rallying people. You rallied family and friends, and you're really encouraging others to do the same, regardless of what a diagnosis may be, but to really get that kind of team around you that's going to understand and be supportive and encouraging along the way.
100%. We could not have done this alone. Our extended family, my sisters, my parents, my husband's mom, have helped us. I can't even explain how much they've helped us. And then as well as Rayanne's teachers, Rayanne's therapists, our church have played such a huge role in Rayanne's success to help her be the person that she is today. So 100% building a strong support system is important. Even Rayanne's physicians, getting them on board and having them work together as a team. Don't have everyone doing their individual care, but to try to bring them together so that the pediatrician is talking to the physical therapist and the physical therapist is talking to the neurologist has just really seemed to work for us.
Well, and I would propose that that's the way for anyone who needs to have multiple practitioners involved, for them to be aware of each other so that they're working more in harmony rather than cross purposes.
Exactly. That would be an ideal situation, wouldn't it? Yeah. For every patient to be able to receive that type of care. And I think it just starts with the parents. They have to really kind of be the person, the leader of their team, and make sure, when you go to your pediatrician appointment, that you let them know what the neurologist is doing and give them the number to the neurologist. I'd really appreciate if you would be in touch. So as the parent, you really kind of have to step up and lead that team, knowing that it's what's best for your child, and not being afraid to hurt anyone's feelings, along the way, if that makes sense.
Right. And you share with us in this wonderful book, A Ray of Hope, some of these details and what you've done. Now, we should establish that you also are working full-time, that this certainly feels like a full-time endeavor as well, tracking everything that is going on with Rayanne, and you have 2 other children. So it's not like this is etched out to be your work. It's something that any of us need to look at and see how we might incorporate it if we have similar kinds of things going on in our life.
Right. I love my job as a pediatric nurse, and I wanted to continue that. And I just recently did take some time off just to kind of focus on my home. But in the meantime, I was working full time, had 2 young children, had Rayanne, who had a lot of needs. And it was about finding balance in the home. And our house felt so out of balance. All of our care and time Rayanne needed it. She was demanding it. And I just had to, again, I try to say fix it, and that's not what happened, but I needed to improve her quality of life in order to find that balance for our home. And so that's what I really dove into, put all my time into. Luckily one day my husband was watching a CNN documentary titled We by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And if everyone has not seen that, I really recommend you seeing it because it just really grabbed our attention. Here was a little girl in Colorado who was just like Rayanne, having severe seizures every day. Her mom actually had her home on hospice care, and her doctors gave her an option to try a heavy veterinary kind of tranquilizer or to try medical cannabis. And because she was in Colorado her family was able to try a high CBD oil and instantly saw results. And so we're seeing this on TV thinking, is this too good to be true? And so we have to find out more. And so my husband and I go to Colorado, and we get to meet the other families who have all relocated, and they all have the same story. They had no other options, and then they start this oil, and they're starting to see positive results. We got to also visit the greenhouse where the plant was grown, then to go into the lab and see how it's made into a medicine, and just thought, oh man, we have to have this for Rayanne. And so we have an option. Do we move from our home and our support system in Florida or, to Colorado, or do we try to stay in Florida and make this a reality for patients here? And so after being invited by Representative Matt Gaetz to speak in Tallahassee at a workshop for a bill that would allow medical cannabis in Florida, we instantly knew. My husband and I both were like, this is where we're meant to be. We have to stay here and fight not only for Rayanne, for the other patients in Florida. And so that's what we did. And for a highly conservative Republican, legislator at the time, somehow this bill passed. 3 months, we just committed ourselves to being in Tallahassee and sharing our story with every senator and representative who would hear us. And I'll never forget a meeting that we had with one representative who was a Baptist preacher and highly conservative. And going in, our lobbyist said, he's not going to support this, but he still needs to hear your story. And after sharing our story, he was praying with us at the end of our meeting, and he became our biggest advocate. He shared that his wife had MS and had passed away, and he had been there with her for the struggles, and he had wished he had other options for her. And he knew he could understand. He could put himself in our shoes of what we were going through. And again, he became our biggest advocate. And so somehow this bill passed, and the Compassionate Medical Cannabis Act of 2014 was a reality, and we just couldn't wait to get Rayanne started on the oil. Unfortunately, government runs slowly when it comes to things like this. It took a good 2 years for the system to be put into place, for the rules and regulations to be put into place, and for the nurseries to be selected, for the plants to be grown, and then for the product to actually be available to patients. And so during this time, my husband and I kind of had a decision to make. Again, do we move to Colorado? And we met with her neurologist, who finally just was very honest with us and said, I think you guys need to make it happen. Get this oil however you need to get it. Here's your order of how I think you should dose it. And so that's what we did.
So, and that was the part I wasn't totally clear about. Of course, this bill is in process in order to make it legal. When the neurologist is able to give a prescription and how to dose it, to administer it, then that legitimizes it so that you can get it, even though, perhaps the state says we haven't quite passed the law yet? How does that work?
No, ma'am. I don't know what my husband did. I didn't want to know.
Okay.
He called Colorado.
Yes, okay.
And he made it happen to where the oil was being delivered to us. And, again, the neurologist just felt like we were at a point where Rayanne's seizures were increasing, that we had to do something, and we had kind of run out of options. She had already tried over a dozen anti-seizure medications. And then we knew the chance of her having success to another new drug would be like a 3% chance. So that was kind of out.
And
she already had a vagal nerve stimulator implanted in her chest, and that was not successful. And our only other option that was presented to us was to have a brain surgery that would disconnect her right and left hemisphere. And the side effects terrified me, and so when you do something like that, the seizures, let's say, start in the right hemisphere, disconnecting the brain only prevents it from transferring to the left hemisphere. So you're still going to have seizures, they're just not going to be as severe. And it was just out. It wasn't an option I wanted to consider. And so this was really the only other thing we had left to try. And so having the neurologist support, we just decided to go for it. And I'm so incredibly grateful that we did.
Because, yes, what were the results fairly immediately, right?
Yeah, within the first week, I noticed that Rayanne's complexion was clearer. And I know that sounds so silly and something so simple, but for us, we had a child for 5+ years who was just always pale and dark circles under her eye. Now she had some pink to her color. Her eyes were clearer. She was making better eye contact. She wasn't drooling as much. She wasn't falling as much. Rayanne was always falling. Her poor little legs were always bruised up. Just little things that we noticed. But then about at the month mark, wow, like Rayanne's seizures are not lasting as long. Like she hasn't had as many. We're counting and we're documenting all of this. She's not had as many as she had before. Like this is really working. Like, are we imagining this? But no, we have it documented. This is really working. And then so eventually it came to the point where Rayanne's going months without seizures. I'm happy to say now that Rayanne is 3 years seizure-free.
No seizures whatsoever.
This is a little girl who seized from birth every single day of her life, and she has not had a seizure in 3 years after using this oil. And, and again, I think, are we imagining this? I've gone to the neurologist, and we've done EEGs, and the last EEG that she had done, he was like, I couldn't believe it. He said, I had to go back and review her previous EEGs to compare it. This is working. This is unbelievable to see. And this current neurologist that we're with wasn't necessarily on board. He, would say, do what you have to do, but I'm not sure that I'm a believer. And after seeing her last EEG, he was like, I cannot believe this. In his report, he said, I'm not allowed to prescribe medical cannabis, but I support this child continuing this therapy. So even he is on board now. So it's pretty incredible.
It is. To think of that huge contrast between seizing every day to having no seizures into now 3+ years, it's like a miracle.
It really is. There's a Dr. Bonnie Goldstein. She's from California. She says that cannabis, is not a miracle drug. There's true science behind it. And I totally agree with her statement. But for us, this has been a miracle. We are just so incredibly thankful that we followed this path and gave this a try. And not to mention that she's 3 years seizure-free, Rayanne successfully weaned off of all of her pharmaceutical medications. So she's no longer taking anti-seizure drugs. Her vagal nerve stimulator is turned off. So this is her only form of seizure treatment that she's receiving, is the high CBD cannabis oil.
And to see this picture of Rayanne on the cover of this book, A Ray of Hope, I mean, she looks like this enthusiastic, vibrant young girl, teenager, that just is filled with joy.
And that is so her. I mean, that's what caught my attention from the beginning, is she just had so much life in her. And I knew it was always there, I'll never forget, she was in the PICU one time in a medically induced coma, and her neurologist said, say your goodbyes. She probably won't make it out of this. And I remember thinking, no, like I know there's so much life in Rayanne. If that's your opinion, we're getting a different, we're getting another opinion. We're going to a different physician. And so I always knew that was in her, and we just had to find a way to let it out and let it shine. And so thankfully, again, that we were led to this path, and this has allowed her to do that.
And really, as we speak, she is so full of joy. She's playing basketball. Isn't she in a tournament right now?
Yeah, we are in Orlando, Florida, for a Special Olympics basketball tournament. Her team competed regionally, and they won, and so they made state, and we came down here for her tournament, and she's about to head out onto the court in just a little bit. Rayanne is just, she has completely changed my life. Like, you can never imagine. She is just such a ray, of sunshine to be around and an inspiration. And I just know that she has so much more to go. I just know that this is just a small part of her mark, that she has so much more to do and to continue changing lives. And so we're just letting her lead the way, and we're following and, being her voice.
Well, there was certainly something very critically important as you came to work that day and found this little child that just grabbed your heart, because with all that's gone on in the intervening years, it certainly has been making such a difference in your lives, of course, but I dare say in the lives of everyone else who is facing some really critical chronic illnesses and seeing a way out of that.
Right. 100% we believe that, God connected us that day and has continued to provide opportunities for us. And, I just encourage all families to never give up and to always hold on to hope. All mothers to just trust your instinct. If a physician says, I don't think you should do this, just really trust your gut. You're with your kiddo all day long, and you know them best. And so we hope that through this we've been able to help Rayanne, and that by the passage of the Compassionate Medical Cannabis Act, it's helping tons of Floridians. And I actually just had a call with some families in Alabama who are, asking for, how did you do it in Florida? We really need to make this happen in Alabama. And so we're just hoping that her story just continues to inspire for change, whatever, that may be.
Exactly. So people can find out more about the story and about the book from a website you have dedicated to the book, right, Holley?
Yes, ma'am. It's arayofhopebook.com. And we have, our story there for you, and you can purchase the book there. You can get it on Amazon as well. The Ray of Hope. And the book is named after Rayanne. Quick story, after the bill passed, Rayanne made kind of a little thank you for the senators and representatives who helped support us, and it was just her handprints. And the first time we did it, it just happened to make a sun, and we were like, perfect, Ray of Hope. And those were given out to the governor of Florida and to many of the senators and representatives, and it just kind of stuck with us. We just feel like our little Rayanne is a ray of hope.
Oh, absolutely. And the story is just so incredibly important in terms of, just the stamina, the strength of families, the bonds that carry us through. Really, then the bonds of community as well. That comes shining through. And, one of the key things that I found as well was how you said it was so important to keep track of things, to keep notes so that you could share those easily with all the different caretakers and providers and such. There's so much work involved, but you try to, I think, divulge this or reveal it in such a way that it makes sense and really encourages us in whatever our own circumstances might be.
Yeah, we have a binder. It's just the Rayanne binder, and I keep everything in there, IEPs, doctor's notes and reports, and it goes with us everywhere. And that has really helped me to keep track of everything. Sometimes when you go to a physician's appointment, for instance, I've been where Rayanne starts having a seizure in the middle of the appointment, and everything I had hoped to say to the doctor just completely, goes out of my mind. And so I would try to bring this binder and then make notes. So I went to the appointment prepared. And if anything happens to throw me off course, I could still come back to what I needed to say and ask questions that I needed to ask. So I really encourage other families to do that, especially when you have young children and just things happen that you can't always predict. To just really stay organized. And again, that goes back to kind of being the leader of your team. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's our job to advocate for our family member and to make sure they get the care that they receive. And so you need to show the doctors that you got this, and you expect them to stand up to that, to those as well.
Yes, because sometimes it's so easy to cower thinking, oh no, the doctor is like this kind of small g God and we don't have anything to say. But I think you really illustrate quite clearly in this book, A Ray of Hope, how that is not our role. Our role is to follow our gut instinct and to really be an advocate. In this case, for our children, it might be for ourselves, it might be for another family member.
Oh, 100%, yes. My experience was just with my child, but it could be, for anyone, and including yourself, that's correct. You have to follow your gut, and it's okay to say that you disagree, and it's okay to get a second opinion, and it's even okay to get a third and fourth opinion. And that's my biggest message to parents when I talk to them is they don't agree, with what the physician's telling them, but they're afraid to say so. And it's okay. You're with your kid all day long. You know your kid best. You know when they cry, it's a happy cry or it's a fake cry or it's a serious I'm hurt cry. And the doctor, only gets to spend a few minutes with you. It's not anything that they're necessarily doing purposely or harmfully. It's just they only spend a few moments with you and your child. And so you have to really stand up and speak up.
Precisely. And this bit of wisdom, along with so many other pieces of wisdom, are all found within the pages of A Ray of Hope, which I feel is like, in a way, a guideline, a map, some way of helping us to feel supported in whatever our journey might be. So let's mention that website once again, Holley.
Yeah, it's arayofhopebook.com.
And it's by Holley Moseley, Moseley spelled?
Moseley spelled Moseley.
Right. Well, Holley Moseley, you are truly a ray of hope yourself, I feel, sharing your story and really, wanting to help others, encourage others, which I feel you have done with us this morning. So thank you so greatly for your openness, your honesty, and encouragement.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
You're so welcome. And with that, we are at the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Holley Moseley and Sunday Morning Magazine with Monique Shields and Dr. Susie Wu. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I'll get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Click on the podcast tab, then look for the show and guest names. I now wish you and your family a day filled with heart in whatever way you see that in your life. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.
This is Mandy Ringenberg with your Sunday morning shout out. And this week's shout out goes to Fostering Together, a community dedicated to nurturing children who may have come from difficult situations. Sometimes all it takes is one person, one caregiver, one friend or family member to positively impact a child's life. If you're interested, Fostering Together helps you with the licensing process and continue ongoing support for families who wish to foster or mentor. Once you become a licensed foster home, the no-cost program works to help you as a foster parent with added resources and information so that you and your child or children have a happy and healthy relationship moving forward. Fostering Together works closely with the state of Washington and Olive Crest, an organization and national leader helping at-risk children, and it helps those children in need by providing them with safe and loving foster families. Before you and your child embark on a journey of a lifetime, you can start the pre-licensing online training where you can get more in-depth steps on what it takes to become a foster parent. This training includes a foster parent orientation, a caregiver core training guideline, and CPR, first aid, and BBP training. Fostering can be a beautiful experience for you and your child, and with the added support, it's so much more help. Fostering Together provides foster communities with additional videos, documents, online training, and community events. Stay mobile with your fostering community and download their app in the Google Play or iTunes app stores. Start your journey today and join the Fostering Together community. Check out their website, fosteringtogether.org, for your first steps to starting your family's journey.